All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to Accuracy in America. I'm John Irvine, and once again joined by my co-host Brian McNicoll.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone to our show today. We are now 1 week into the Biden presidency, but before I go there, I just want to say that if you're on the West Coast or somewhere around the West, at least the Sierra Nevadas, you're going to get pounded or getting pounded, I guess. There's supposed to be like 100 inches of snow or 10 feet of snow or something out there.
Wow.
That is just like nuts. I was watching a little bit of the news this morning, and I saw this truck just coming down the road like this, pickup truck, and next thing you know, it crossed over the road and then went down.
I don't think it's designed to do that.
Well, my wife reminds me that, is having driven on I-80 out west, anytime you're anywhere near there in the wintertime, it's just treacherous.
Yeah.
You just see destroyed trucks, basically, all the tractor trailers off at the side of the road.
Also, there's big gates on the highways where they just close it. They just shut the gate and nobody's going any further.
Yeah, and that's the way we have to do it. You have to be cautious about this. I mean, these trucks, they'll sway. All kinds of things happen to them in an open space like that.
Yeah.
And
it's 88,000 pounds. And it's on a swivel, so it can get some movement.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think about how much force wind has, even on us driving passenger vehicles.
Right.
If you're just in an area, sometimes my wife has commented recently, it's just like how she can feel it, like you're crossing over a bridge and there would be heavy wind, and you're like, suddenly you feel like you need to like really grip the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Because you're just feeling like you're going to be moving a little bit or something like that.
Yeah, East Coasters, you can get that experience. The Tidings Bridge going up 95 north of Baltimore, like headed up toward Philly.
Yeah,
that bridge. Once you get on that, because there's banks of trees before you get there. Then when you come out on the bridge, you're just like, every bit of wind coming down the Susquehanna River is you, right? So
yeah, so it's something. All right, so on to the real news, which is, as I said, so President Biden now in office for about 7 days. I guess officially 7 days when he hit noon or something like that. But nevertheless.
Actually, he was sworn in by the time we were done.
That's right, yeah. They swore him in. I didn't actually follow that story. I did see something about that. I'm not sure what the reason was. I don't know if that was a security reason or something like that. I didn't follow through on that. I did see a comment from a local friend of mine from the Central Committee, and he's just like, "Hey, what happened?" It's like, did he get sworn in already?
Yeah, I mean, it was over when we signed off at noon last week. It was over. Both of them, Harris as well.
Yeah. So
I wonder, nothing happened of any moment there.
Right.
But if he's sworn in and it's 11:30, right? And I don't know when it was finished.
Yeah.
So something happens between 11:30 and 12. Who's in charge, right? Because the Constitution, the rules are clearly stated that it's till noon on January 20th. So, I don't know what would have happened there. It's a good thing nothing happened because, this administration is not showing itself able to deal with things on the fly well at all.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you, or at least kind of give your general feeling about how you think this first week has gone for him. You've just made a little comment there, but kind of expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think that it's funny because like a lot of the things that Trump supporters warned people about with Biden have come true in spades. He is controlled by others, right? These executive orders are not. He said, he wasn't going to stop fracking and he wasn't going to stop the Keystone, right? So he gets into office and it's like, we will stop fracking and we will stop the Keystone. And we will stop drilling in Anwar. We will stop, bringing in, the things that gave us low energy prices and energy independence for the first time since the 40s. Right. Let's get rid of all that and go back to having to negotiate with hostile regimes and being vulnerable on energy. And, everyone in America has already seen a swift and rather prominent price hike. Right. I mean, gas is up 40 to 50 cents per gallon since he took office over most of the country. Why is that? Because there's less confidence that we will continue to pursue prudent energy policy, right? We're going back to, like, for instance, the Keystone, okay? In the case of the Keystone pipeline, that oil, okay, what they're doing is they're moving oil out of the tar sands in Alberta and up in North Dakota and so forth, down to the Gulf Coast, the Texas Gulf Coast, where there are plants set up to deal with extremely heavy oil, which that is the most viscous heavy oil on the planet, some of it, right? So, there are right now 3 big pipelines that are sharing that, and they were trying to add, the last part of the Keystone pipeline to take the pressure off of that. That oil is going to come through. It's going to, they send us about 3.8 million barrels a day through those pipelines, trucks, rail, other means of transportation. Now, this time next year, it will be but close to 4.5 million barrels a day, regardless of what happened, with, Biden's, for show move, right? Just to like burnish his environmental credentials or whatever. The oil's coming south. It's now coming by less safe means, because pipeline is easily the most safe means that oil can travel. And, you have created a bottleneck with rail right now. So a lot of that oil is going to have to move by rail and truck out of that area, which means, space on those trains is going to come at a premium, which means farmers trying to move their products out of that part of the world are going to pay more to ship it, right? Which means food, not just energy, but food prices will go up, right? Energy that's a regressive tax. Yeah, everyone has to pay it. Everyone's going to pay for transportation one way or another, unless you stay home. But and very few people stay home. And they don't care. They don't care like how bad they squeeze people. They don't care what it does to poor people. They don't talk about that, right? You have a meaningless victory, right? So they can posture as environmentally friendly that does nothing but hurt Americans.
Right. And I think you've just made a really important point here with this. It's just that the general thinking, and I think the way the media portrays this, the way the left, the environmentalists portray this, is that stopping this pipeline is going to stop the oil from flowing north to south. But it's not. This was just a more cost-efficient, safer means of transporting this oil. They're going to do it anyway. So now, as you have just pointed out, they're going to have to use rail or truck or some other form of transportation to do this. Part of the problem is, though, is that because of the pandemic, we are already experiencing lots of issues with our transportation system. There's a limited supply on trucks. There's a limited supply on the rail, and they're clogged, and all kinds of things that we're still trying to work out all the logistics issues of how to solve these problems. The last thing our system needs is to have to move this stuff onto
introduce our own shop to it, do it to ourselves, right? Yeah. And who makes the money off those tight trains? Do you know? Who controls the rail traffic up there, that part of the country? Warren Buffett. Who does he donate to?
Yeah, he tends to lean to one side a little bit.
He does. He says he's nonpartisan, but he gives all the money to Democrats.
Yeah, because Berkshire Hathaway bought it was Burlington Northern.
Right.
Bought that. Yeah. So and which is interesting because a lot of people at the time actually thought it was not a great move on his part, but he's a long-term investor. And it's paying off in spades. If you own, a rail company right now, you're doing pretty darn well in terms of, the money flow is good, right. You're just being utilized. I mean, and even if you own a transportation company like, if you're running FedEx or UPS, they're all, they're just, they're maxed out for the most part. They have never.
They can't hire enough people. Their problem is finding people to work for them.
And realistically, there's only so much roadway and ability to move these things,
especially in that part of the country where you're going to lose some days for weather.
Right. It's not like they're going to go and be able to build another track, another rail, track from north to south, in a short period of time. This is not going to happen. So it is just this. It's a fake victory.
Yeah, it's government created scarcity. I mean, you couldn't do a worse thing to the economy if you tried.
Right. And so Bob has just chimed in here with his. We love fans like Bob, right? Spot on with your assessment of the Biden administration's efforts to crush the fossil fuel industry. Some upset folks on the LA Gulf Coast, and for good reason. So, that's just the thing. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit last week, because when he signed the the executive order, executive action, whatever you want to call it, we talked about the number of jobs that are going to be lost on this. And it just seems that Biden himself seems to be pretty nonplussed about all of that. In the midst, we're still in a pandemic. We're still trying to get people back to work. We have a chance to get thousands and thousands of jobs out there and put some people back to work. And instead, he's killing the jobs.
But high pay, those are good high paying jobs too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's really kind of crazy. Now, I didn't look to see, and maybe you have. So he's supposed to be signing some more executive orders. Today's on climate action or something like that, I believe. Yeah,
he's got some more. He wants to. What were they? One of them was like how fuel will be used, and they're always trying to dictate the energy mix. It has to be so much renewable. It's like if this is so good, why do we have to keep propping it up? Why can't it? And when's it going to stand on its own?
Right. Well, I mean, and we've talked about EVs and things like that. It's just like,
but I mean that hurts you, right? You go to electric. I mean, you got to guess what? They use fossil fuels too, and the fossil fuel they use is worse than cars burning gas.
Well, it's kind of like they think people who, these people who are so dyed in the wool on the EVs, they think that, like solar and wind can generate enough electricity to power their cars.
I mean, it's 8% now with all the government subsidies. If you've been in 1 year, the wind production tax credit was allowed to expire. 92% of the investment in wind power disappeared. Now, why is that? Because unless it's government subsidized, it doesn't make economic sense. Okay, it does some places like West Texas. They're providing a lot of the power needed out in like Amarillo, that part of the Texas Panhandle, and so forth, with wind turbines. Okay, that's good, but here, does that work in the DC area? No, it doesn't. We don't have enough sun here to have solar power. For solar power to be a main solution for a lot of people. It is at times, but at times it's not. A few years ago, Chicago had a heat wave, and the solar, all the alternative energy, solar, wind, everything was able to provide about 1.5% of the demand, right? So, who was doing the rest of it? Who was keeping Chicago cool then? It wasn't those guys. It was the regular old oil and gas guys, right? So, if you want to work on stuff to like reduce our dependence on oil and gas, good, go for it, right? But do not mandate that we change until we have something to change to, because we don't right now. Even Elon Musk says, and he's trying to sell electric cars, right? He lost $38 billion last year on Tesla, right? I don't know how long they're going to go on losing $38 billion a year, but he says, we don't have enough electricity. If I could sell all my cars, we wouldn't have the electricity to power them. So, we got to stop and think about like, what are we going to do for power here if, we're not allowed to do sensible things like ANWR and Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah, no, this thing about Musk is always kind of funny. So, as I've said before, I have solar panels on my roof here, and I took the 20-year lease plan. So, I pay Tesla, Solar City now Tesla, a per kilowatt hour rate for all the energy that the panels generate, and then that's used as a credit against my Pepco bill here. But the guys came out. They were out here last week doing some maintenance, and then today they're back, and apparently they're replacing all my panels. So maybe, I don't know if it's because of they're seeing some weakness in it. In 4 or 5 years, the technology, maybe these are just going to be better, higher grade panels. They'll be able to generate a lot more energy. But you mentioned how it's really generally pretty darn cloudy in our area. It's pretty hard to generate enough electricity from the solar panels to actually offset the electricity the bill from Pepco. It's really, really tough to do that, because it's not like the sun is generating a ton of electricity, when it's hitting the panel and doing all this. This is a very slow process. And, I have a relatively good sized roof, so I've got a lot of panels on there, but, I look at houses that have got like 10 panels on there. I mean, small house, they probably aren't using a lot of electricity, but they're also not going to be generating a lot either, as well. So it's just, yeah, Musk is right. The Tesla is an interesting company because, yes, Elon Musk, I will give him credit. It is unbelievable what he's been able to do with this company. He has convinced Wall Street and all these investors that he's got the magic bullet here or whatever.
Yeah.
He solved the solution. So he's got the world's most valuable car company. I mean, the market value of the company exceeds GM, Ford. What you
Toyota combined.
Yeah, combined even, right? And and the stock has risen more than eightfold in the last year or something like that. And he can continue, and he can sell stock to raise more money for the company, to fund the company, because it's at the stratospheric level. People will continue to buy into that. And yet he's out there telling you, by the way, we really don't have enough electricity to power all the cars if I actually sell all the cars and continue to ramp up my manufacturing. But nobody's listening.
Right. That's right.
And in the meantime,
I want to hear that. We turned the page. We got a new president.
Right. I mean, GM, Ford, all these guys. I mean, is it Volvo that's going all electric? I mean, there's all these mandates that by, say, 2035, 2050, a lot of these states, is that to eliminate gas-powered car sales in the states, and have selling, electric type vehicles. It's like, this is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It's a feel good, makes everybody feel like they're doing something, but I mean, the law is the law, and it's going to be, it's going to be crazy when people realize that we can't come close to following that law.
All right. So I want to ask you this too, because I posed this question on Facebook, which is just, do you see any buyer's remorse from Biden voters right now? It's only been a week, but some policies and things like that.
Well, obviously, some of the leftists are not real happy because there's already some protest and dissension on the other side. I have to believe that there are a few people out there who, thought Trump was a mean tweeter or whatever, who are now saying, well, yeah, but he was competent. And these people are not even close to competent. So, I have to believe that, like, the longer this goes on, the incompetence of the present bunch is going to be what shines through, right? Because this is the gang that can't shoot straight. It's unbelievable.
Right. And I think I said this last week too, or maybe on a Tittle No Show. I can't remember where I said this, but without Trump on Twitter, for example, it does expose the Biden administration, because what are you going to be listening to or watching? You're going to be watching their press conferences. You're going to be looking at everything, all the EOs, he signs and everything like that, and what he says and he does. Trump is not a distraction. Trump could be a huge distraction to the Biden administration and the media, but he's kind of out of the picture right now because he's been deplatformed. And so now you spend all this time looking at Biden. You're thinking, like, really?
Right. And the other thing is like, with Trump and what he did with the Twitter and so forth, when you got the news, you also received Trump's explanation of it, right? Trump's version of events, right? These guys, you really don't. It's really, it happens and the news media covers it, and then they're responding like old-fashioned days, right? So, the first narrative that gets out there is theirs, not yours. With Trump, it was like you got the news and Trump's interpretation of it at the same time. So you were starting out judging it, knowing both of those things. Now it's, you get the news and then they go track them down and ask them about it. And, half the time, I tell you who's really missed in America is Kayleigh McEnany, because man, Psaki does not seem to know what's going on. Half the time she doesn't know what the administration thinks. So, McEnany had was always, I just came from a meeting with the president, right? So she knew what the president was thinking and wanted to say about each issue. Psaki is caught flat-footed every day. I don't think he meant, I'll ask him, I'll get back to you. At what point, lady, do you get online here and start participating in the process? I mean, extremely poor start for her.
Yeah, and the thing about sometimes as maddening as Trump would be on Twitter, it was a no filter situation. And so we have gone back to that filtered news through the administration.
Right. But it's also filtered. But first, it is filtered through the media. So you get their version and then Biden's reaction. It's not even Biden, it's her. Their reaction to this. That's the other thing is like, Trump was the Trump White House, right?
Right.
The Biden White House, he's the 9th or 10th person you may hear from, right? I mean, he's way in the back of the line. There's all these other people that run up and say it first.
All right. I wanted to get I saw this report and I want to get your opinions about this report about $145 million of dark money into the Biden campaign that helped propel him to office. What's your take on this?
Well, my take on this is that, what he did was legal, right? I don't think private organizations should have to reveal their donors. I think all you need to know about why that is the Supreme Court case that determined that. The name of that case was NAACP v. Alabama. So you can imagine why Alabama wanted NAACP's membership list and donor list and so forth. So, they operated within the law. Now, if you want to fix this, then, get rid of McCain-Feingold. McCain never did anything good for this country. I'm pretty convinced once he came back from Vietnam. And that campaign finance law was a disaster. So you have campaign contribution limits, right? Like $2,500 or something. So everybody who has the money to get to play in politics maxes out, right? Leaving all this money out there that wants to get into the political system and influence the debate. It can't funnel in through the legal means because you said you're not going to let that happen because, then people can't be influenced by money, which is, obviously not happening, right? Obviously, your strategy has not worked, right? So, remove the limits, improve reporting, make everybody report everything, and let people give what they want. So it comes through the party and the candidates. That way you can hold them accountable. And also the party can have the effect. And I think both parties would be interested in this, of leavening views, right? So if your funding comes from a party and your funders are recruited by the party, then you owe some allegiance to the party. You have to generate acceptance within the party, which means your whack job people cannot hijack the party because they have to be able to convince regular party people of their viability, right? So you would have a whole lot. I don't know about AOC because the district she's in is the most immigrant, non-American born district in the country, right? So you have a lot of people who don't know a lot about American politics, like that's their congressperson, right? But, Ro Khanna, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, these kind of freaks in Congress, and there's some on our side too. It would be harder for them to do it because you would have to convince actual people who win actual elections and understand how elections work of your personal and philosophical viability. So you're minimizing, you work in party politics. You minimize the influence of the parties, right? And, now it's like, it's all these outside giving, outside sources and so forth. It's interesting though, he had 146 million in donations from these sources. Trump had 24 million. So much less. Trump much more reliant on people, legit people giving legit money through legit sources,
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, campaign finance, which I generally loathe, having worked with it for the last several years in the state of Maryland, is just there just ought to be some better way. I mean, and I understand some of these things in terms of some things I hate about it in a way, but I think there ought to be better ways. It just seems like McCain-Feingold, all it did was force people to do other things, to chop
Right.
money and send it in other ways. And so it really created a chance for more mischievousness along the way. It would be far better. I mean, I kind of like this whole idea. I mean, maybe I'm not taking your idea quite into play here, but I mean, if corporations gave money to the parties themselves, and then the parties distributed that, is that what you're trying to say? Is cleaner than going to?
I'm saying, yeah, or directly to the candidates. As long as I know, hey, you got $10 million from Coca-Cola. Now you're voting for soda bills, right? Okay, we know where it came from.
You see the cause and effect kind of a thing.
Yeah, and report everything. Newt Gingrich talked about this way back when he was speaker in the mid-90s. Accept anything, report everything, and as long as the voters know where you're getting your money, what difference does it make, right? We can all make those judgments. Hey, my guy, I'm not for energy, and this guy's taking money from oil companies. Is he really gonna do all the environmental stuff he says, since he's got all these contributions from ExxonMobil? Okay, I may not trust his views on the environment, right? I may want to go ask some more questions, see how committed he is, right? We don't know all that because we forced that all into dark money, where these are private organizations. They're doing their own private thing, in theory, not coordinating with the campaigns, and you have no right to know where their money came from or what they're using it for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things in Maryland is just that the campaign limits are based on what they call the gubernatorial cycle of 4 years. So you have to actually, if you're actually somebody who's wealthy, you actually have a limit, and a relatively low limit of before you hit your max in a 4-year period. I mean, people can easily give that money in 1 year, and then they're basically not supposed to be giving for another 3 years. That doesn't, I don't know. It just seems it doesn't seem right, because it seems that it would wind up crippling other party apparatus that could use the money in between, or it goes into these other organizations if you have a strong enough other organizations to actually do that. In Maryland, for the Republican side, it's really the local Republican parties, the state Republican Party, and there's not a whole lot of other outside groups that actually throw money into the party or to the candidates. So it seems I see Republican candidates kind of getting handcuffed in a lot of ways as a result of this. I haven't heard anybody really complain, but I just see that these are issues that when you put these limits on, it causes more problems than it solves.
Right. Exactly. That's my point is you're not really helping, and you're not really cleaning up elections, because now, it's farther off. You have no right to see the donor list. Right. So, yeah, politicians may end up with more money to campaign, but if they do, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to tell you more about themselves, right? Or tell you more about their opponent, right? They're going to give you additional information to try to shape how you vote, correct? So, is more information for elections good or bad? I would think good, wherever it comes from, and we can all judge it according to how we got it and so forth, but now you don't know who told you that or why, or how they got the money to tell you that.
Right. All right. So Bob's got another comment for us here. Early on, it appears Ms. He served with honor and distinction, is moving around plenty of pieces on the chessboard while Mumbles plays checkers to amuse himself.
Yeah, that's about right.
All right. Well, actually, that leads into my next thing about which I thought was just, I don't even know what to make of this. So the Los Angeles Times, which has written a lot about Kamala Harris and her career, is assigning a reporter to cover her as the vice president, because all the groundbreaking things that she has been, South Asian descent and black, all those kind of things. It's like, does the LA Times need to assign a reporter? We actually have a vice president beat. I mean, is that
establishing something as a beat? It does not necessarily mean you assign a reporter to it full time. But yeah, someone to it's probably assigned to an editor to make sure that certain benchmarks are met with this beat. But I don't really blame them. I read up on what they had done, and it's open to a lot of mockery and so forth. But she's a Californian. They're they posit themselves as the leading newspaper of California. She's a Californian who's gotten into a national office and does have a remarkable career. She checks a lot of boxes for firsts and so forth. And right now you would have to say that in 2024, Biden's already said he doesn't intend to run for re-election. So she's probably a top candidate on the Democrat side. And it's probably not a bad time to start tracking her and what she does and how she is perceived in the national spotlight. So I don't think they're wildly off base with it.
I mean, do you think that they're likely, though? I mean, knowing the LA Times in general, I mean, it's going to be much more favorable.
It's hagiography. It's don't look for like really critical coverage of it, but the information will be there, and you'll be able to sort through it and see what needs to be checked on. And we should, as consumers of news, know what to do with information from unreliable sources such as the LA Times at this point, right?
We should.
You should realize it's not reliable and it needs to be double checked.
Yeah, but I think there is going to be this media love affair with Kamala Harris. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a while before they actually get into any critical articles about her at all. The
Post is nauseating. The Washington Post with all the, her shoes and, her husband and where she lives and, what they've done with the Blair House. You better not do anything with the Blair House, right? Just sleep there until they tell you to leave. It's fine like it is.
I remember I was reading a story. I can't remember if it was the Post or where it was, or the New York Times. They're talking about Harris and then her husband's ex-wife, and how they'll get along well together. And so she's kind of really got the stepkids. In essence, she interacts with her stepkids, and so they call her Mamala.
Yeah. And then the son, I think either the son or the daughter said, it's not really true.
But I just think it's like, what else can they kind of create? They want to, this whole image they want to foster about Kamala Harris is like, I don't know.
She's managed, I will say this, she's managed to keep the fangs hidden in recent months, right? I mean, the Kamala Harris who embarrassed herself during the Kavanaugh hearings, we really don't see, right? So they've really said, turn that off. We don't want that. And she hasn't flashed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think as kind of Bob pointed out too. I mean, she's kind of waiting in the wings here. I mean, let Biden and his people kind of stumble about this, and then he'll come out looking like the super competent one.
Yeah, right. That's right. I mean, it ain't gonna be hard with these guys. They'll look more competent than they are.
All right. So then also we had a Senate vote, a procedural vote, where 45 Republicans said that the upcoming impeachment trial is unconstitutional. We had, not unsurprisingly, with Collins, Murkowski, and Romney voting with the Democrats, but we joined also by, Sass and Toomey.
Right.
So Toomey's retired.
Toomey's dead man walking. I think he realizes that.
Yeah,
I think also in the situation of Toomey is, he realized that the people who support Trump were not going to support him. And, that he got out for the same reason that Corker got out, Flake got out, and, because these guys realize you can't make money. You can't raise the money because, the Trump supporters dominate the party right now. So he was dead men walking. Sass has never tried to make it on the back of Trump. And the other three, and always like Collins, she dithers a lot, usually ends up in the right place. And she's got a tricky situation, right? Maine's not really a conservative state, and she's trying to win elections. So she does the right thing on the day they vote to organize the Senate, right? She votes for the Republican to be majority leader, and the rest of it kind of flows from there. 5 went against. Now, what this tells you is they're not close to 17 votes, which they would have to convict. At one point, they said there were 15 possibles, and now you see that 10 of those reverted back to saying voting that they thought it was unconstitutional, including the leader, Ms. McConnell. So, I mean, they can have their show trial, but I think it's looking sillier and sillier for the Democrats to pursue this.
Right, and the thing is that
finding an off ramp.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is that even with those 5, they're not even saying that those 5 are going to vote to convict Trump anyway. You might get one or two. I mean, Susan Collins might decide to show her independence and say, yeah, enough, or Murkowski. But I don't think all 5 would even vote to convict. I think that that most of the Republicans will stay home and will side with this, because then it becomes a question of how much do you blame Trump for all of these things. And I think a reasonable person is going to find that these are very trumped up charges. This is just craziness.
I mean, something needs to be, because it'll go down in history. And this is a lot of Nancy Pelosi's intent on doing this. Is she wants Trump to go down as the only president to be impeached twice. Okay. So what history is going to show is that an out of control, criminally partisan Democrat Party played with the very serious tools of democracy. They treated them like toys to be used and abused as they saw fit, according to their particular peak of the day. Right? They're going to be viewed as historically irresponsible people for the way they pursued Trump. Right? Because they're going to have shot twice and missed both times. Badly. The first one laughed out of court, literally laughed off the floor of the Senate. And this one, they won't come close to having enough votes if it ever goes to trial, which it may not.
Right. I mean, are you surprised that Biden said it has to happen?
I am. And I think that's another thing, because earlier he was saying this may not be necessary and maybe we should think twice. And, some people went and got in his ear. And since he doesn't really think any thoughts of his own, he swayed to the other side. So people don't realize that this is an inept White House. It's dangerously inept to the point where we're in danger until these people are out of office.
And then,
we are not safe.
Right. And then to add on to this, I mean, Chief Justice Roberts is not going to preside over this. It'll be Patrick Leahy, right?
Right. I mean, if he makes it, Patrick, he'd been in the hospital. Well, he was in the hospital yesterday. Right. Yeah. So the Chief Justice, who's no friend of Trump's, right, is telling you, I'm not going to do this because it's not constitutional. Their only thing that they could hope to achieve of this is to say he can't run again, right? And I don't think that you can sell that at this point, right? I think you go to the voters and say, do we really want to say that a candidate can't run again? Really, you cannot, because they told this Belknap guy who worked for Grant, right? U.S. Grant, 130, 40 years ago, who he confessed to extensive wrongdoing, rushed up there to resign to avoid impeachment, right? And then they're like, buddy, you're not getting out of it that easy. And they went ahead and impeached him, and they said, you can't come back, right? Which he wasn't coming back anyway, because he had admitted he had done wrong and he had admitted it, right? That's their precedent, right? By which they can try and Trump and put these sanctions on him. But, the country's against it. Like, it's 17, 18 points underwater in the polls. There's no benefit to them for pursuing this. It's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this before. I mean, because we knew this was going to come. It's just that here you have a brand new president. He has an agenda. He's got to get his people confirmed to get them into the cabinet, and that is kind of moving along. But he has, he's got the COVID relief, thing he wants to get done, and a whole bunch of other things he needs to do legislatively. And you can't do that if you're going to hold this impeachment trial, which is a farce to begin with, where, as you said, the public is not in favor of it. They're not going to get a conviction. It's 50-50 at best, maybe, if they actually are able to say you can't run again. But it just looks at petty partisan politics on this whole thing, that it doesn't seem that it would do Chuck Schumer and the Democrats any good to push forward with this at all. And how does Patrick Leahy, try to preside over this?
How's he the judge, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and it's not going to. He doesn't add to their credibility, right? Of all the people they could have picked, he's not. I mean, he's the president pro tempore. He's the longest serving Democrat of the Senate. He's the only Watergate baby remaining in Congress, and he's one of the most partisan people on Capitol Hill. I don't see how, you can look at this having been fairly judged. I mean, it's going to be ridiculed at every step.
Bob has chimed in here. A gang of 5, no conservative, politically astute Republican more broadly will want to be associated with moving forward.
Right.
True. Right. Very true. That is very true. But, Watergate baby for Leahy, so that tells me already he's been around way too long. To begin with. But I don't know. I mean, it's just that it just seems so silly for them to be going down this path at all. And I just don't see how the public is going to believe that this is going to be impartial in any way, shape, or form, the way the Democrats have set this up. And, and also you look at, once again, we talked about the impeachment managers, Swalwell. I mean, he's still trying to bat down his Chinese spy scandal thing. He's trying to blame it on the Republicans and conservatives.
He's judging this. I mean, it's unreal. And it's like, is there no one there telling them how deeply unserious this is and how harmful it is to what they say they're trying to do? Where are the voices of reason in the Democrat Party saying, this will not be perceived as fair? No, a lot of people won't care, right? We'll think it's nonsense no matter what. And the Democrats will think that Trump deserves whatever he gets no matter what. But, this is not going to work. It's just that the numbers aren't there.
All right. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about Jen Psaki and her just terrible press conferences by your measure, and she has struggled. I mean, I did watch this particular segment, where Peter Doocy was asking her questions about the violence. This was on the 25th. This was on Monday, I guess. Asking when the administration, the president was going to condemn the violence in Portland. Really in the Northwest and Seattle. But so I think all the things that have been going on there. We had a Democrat party office vandalized. We had an ICE office. And there's just been a lot of violence. I mean, these Antifa people, these lefties. They're showing that they don't like Joe Biden either, and they're out there doing this. But the administration
are anti-Biden protests. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
They specifically by name referred to them as anti-Biden protests.
Yeah, and so he asked her, and her initial response I was watching was just that, the president, basically, he's going to be taking questions from reporters later this afternoon. Maybe he'll answer that then, was kind of the thing. And then she went and she on behalf of the administration, she condemned any kind of violence and that anybody involved should be prosecuted to the fullest. But it just seems like there's like a zigzag here. It's like, well, we'll do this. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I ought to say this. And
right. It's like there's no direction. And think about what she said. Her first response is, he's going to talk about this later. Okay. I haven't talked to him about it. I don't know what he wants to say. We don't have any kind of strategy for it, so just ask him later when you see him. Imagine what he thought when he saw that. She just dumped this all on me. Thank you, girl. Good job. I mean, and then she takes the position that, is not popular in the Democrat Party to condemn the protest. So, the thing she burbled out, I don't think is really their position. Now is there a journalist in America who's going to go say, hey, Joe, do you agree with your press secretary that these people should be condemned and locked up? No, they won't. They're going to let him slide. But, that's the question that needs to be answered.
Right. And it seems it's going to be interesting because it seems that that Peter Doocy, of all people, is going to be like the main guy that we're going to see calling them out and getting the attention for doing a lot of these things. That he may be the one guy that's going to try to hold the Biden administration's feet to the fire a little bit. It's an uphill battle, but he's going to be out there doing it. I think in one of the earlier press conferences, I think she even called him Steve, or his father, not him, got him mixed up a little bit along the way here. She has struggled. I did see somebody on Facebook that had commented about her. He says, why does this press secretary say so much? She thought it was kind of unprofessional for someone like that should be kind of using, doing that all the time. Now, the other thing too comes to the vaccines, and I have to give Zeke Miller from the AP some credit for this, for pushing really hard, what I thought was remarkably hard on the administration and Psaki and Biden on this. He was at a White House event with Biden, asked about the vaccines. He gets the response about, isn't this too low a bar? Because the day he was there, the 7-day tracker from Bloomberg had 912,000 rolling day, 7-day average of vaccinations. Biden is 1 million a day for the first 100 days, 100 million doses. That's been kind of the thing that they've been doing, trying to sell to the public. So Zeke's, Miller's out there saying, well, we're kind of always there. So isn't that too low a bar? He says, oh, come on, man. He says, that's a good number. Give me a break. About an hour later, he's at the press conference with Psaki, and they bring us up, and they're still struggling with this whole thing. And then what do we see now? We see just, what was it, yesterday? All of a sudden, the story is it's 150 million doses that they hope to get to. So they've made now a 50% increase. And I think that Miller pointing out that, Psaki, when she tried to defend it, she was mixing up the figures. She was using the averages from the Trump administration from the time they had to start rolling it out versus what the 7-day averages were, where we were now. Two radically different sets of numbers. And now it's like
they didn't understand that. They also made a 50% increase promise that the vaccine makers are unable to deliver. Right? They're telling you, hey, you need to lower expectations here because we're trying to do this stuff right. We can't make anybody sick, right? And so we're trying to be very cautious about what we're making here. And you're like, come up with 50% more instantly. That's not prudent at all.
Well, that was part of the thing. There are two things about this that got to me. One is that did they check with the manufacturers about will they be able to get enough supply? The other thing is that I looked at the 7-day tracker. The 7-day tracker as of yesterday morning was at 1.25 million. They were already very close to the next one. They had made a big leap, so they're getting close to that whole 1.5 million anyway. But the long term, the bigger question is the supply there? Right. And it seems to me that the supply right now is rather constrained.
That's right. There's some people like Fairfax County. Like as a coach. I'm considered a teacher in the county, and they offered all the county employees, all the county public school employees, opportunity to get the vaccine, so they could go back to teaching in class and so forth. They've also announced a plan. They'll have everybody back inside the school by I think it's toward the end of March, that they'll all be back in actual school. So and now they have gone back and said, okay, we're not going to give any more because we have to save the vaccines we have left for the second doses for the people who've already had one dose. So we don't have enough to add anybody new to the list. So and it's all over the country that there are shortages, and so you're upping the goal without having talked to the drug manufacturers, which appears to be the case here. Trump had them on speed dial, like he was talking to the head of Moderna and so forth every day. And these guys, they know about governing and they know how governing works, but like how actually moving people in society to do what you need to be done, they have no clue because they're not used to, Biden spent the last 50, 60 years of his life in government. He hasn't had to persuade a business person to do anything. He did it through regulatory or whatever forces.
So they have all these. They're throwing out all these COVID plans, very extensive, documents and things like that on how to fight this and all this stuff. But in your opinion,
he comes out and says, hey, we really can't change the trajectory of it, which he took a lot of heat for that. But the truth of the matter is they can't change the trajectory of it, right? Trump has done as much as it could be done at this point. It's done. You have a vaccine. It's a matter of rolling it out, getting everybody one, making enough where we all have second shot, and, getting people to accept it. There's still, pretty good portion of the country that doesn't trust it enough to take it, but, they don't have that, they don't have the level of knowledge to do that. They can make government plans because they know how to think like government, but they don't have any sense of reality.
All right. So Bob threw in here a little thing here. Psaki, I will bet 100,000. Mumbles, I will raise you 50,000. Fauci, please call. Throw a little more humor into the whole thing.
Right.
But that's it just doesn't seem that they know what the heck is going on here.
They don't have no idea what they're doing. It's like, oh no, we won,
Well, so I want to ask you though, how long, how much time does the public give the Biden administration, to try to, to quote, fix it or to get a handle of this? Because people are still dying. People are still getting, hospitalized and everything. So, things haven't really improved since Biden officially took office, right? There's always going to be a lag effect anyway. But how long a rope, does the public give Biden?
Well, fortunately for him, in the United States, viruses die on about the 18th week of the year. There's virtually no transmission of viruses after the 18th week. That it's down to less than 1% of what it is now. So that's the second week of May or so. And so they can bide their time till then. Their numbers will look a lot better almost no matter what they do. So, the hospital beds peaked, hospital bed use in the U.S. because of COVID peaked on Thanksgiving Day. It's been going down since. It's now down to the point where, Michigan, New York, Illinois are reopening, California reopening, because they don't have, the danger is abating, and it's abating because of the things that were put in place before Joe Biden took office. But he's going to be the one who gets the credit because it's going to end on his watch, so that's where we're headed.
All right. So 2 minutes.
Oh, we're already there. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. So right. Tonight, it'll be the last game for my TJ junior varsity basketball team. We play down at Justice. It will be our 6th game of the season. We had 6 games canceled because of COVID, of us pausing and other teams pausing and things not working out. And since I'm JV, they don't make them up. They're trying to make up some of the varsity games, but the JV games, they're and when you ask about it, they say cannot get officials. Right? It's very hard to get people to ref games and in the COVID atmosphere and so forth. I cannot say enough about the other thing is the numbers of all these programs are down. We had 39 people, I think, in our program last year, and we have 18 this year. So our practices, we usually have 5 players at practice. So those 5 girls got worked real hard. And we had, but it was some great stories come out of it. I have a girl who, she made the first basket of her life on December 7th. That was the day we started practicing. And last week she scored in a game. So, she went from never having done this to scoring in a high school game in about a month and a half. And, she might score again tonight. She's got really good speed and, will be a helpful player for us. But, in a normal year, it's possible that she would have gotten cut. It was if you'd have had enough people to fill the teams who had played basketball before and didn't know what was. I remember early in it, we told her to cut, Hannah, cut. And she didn't move. And it's what is meaning cut? You think, okay, I tell my 5th grade team to cut. Every single person on that team knows what cut means. They're not cut to the right place, but they know what it means to cut, right? But just like you're explaining the terms, every term of basketball. See, and I told her the other day, she asked what a 1-3-1 zone is. So I showed her where, and I'm like, look, I'll tell you what, the other kids don't ask the question. I said it in front of all of them too. I said, the other kids don't ask the questions you ask, but I guarantee you they're listening to the answers, right? They're learning stuff too. They're like, oh, that's what he means by that, right? So, those 5 people, though, extraordinary progress they made, dedication they showed. It will be hard to say goodbye to them tonight.
Well, that's a great story. Yeah, I mean, I think despite all the travails we've had with COVID over the last year, it's hard to believe that it's really we've been into this thing. We started seeing a lot of this thing about a year or so ago. And what we've all gone through as Americans, and just in different parts of our life. But for the sports teams, for the kids that haven't been able to play, luckily for some of those, and for the kids that never really got a chance before, this is their chance to shine. I mean, even if they're not going to turn out to be the high school stars or whatever of tomorrow, they've had their moment in the sun, something they wouldn't have had otherwise. So there are these interesting and wonderful silver linings to this
That's
along
right.
the way. Bob is wishing you all the best on the finale, but so I just want to say, we lost Henry Aaron this week. So this was the 10th Hall of Famer to die in the last year. Unbelievable. Yeah. I was watching the Hall of Fame ceremony last night live. I wanted to see whether or not they would manage to squeak somebody in last night, and as I expected, they didn't. Schilling got, I guess, a little bit closer than he had the previous year, but I think they're still looking at his politics and holding that against him. But
part of it's his politics, but part of it's like, the way he pursues it too. So Schilling's always rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, and so
you think about it, he got traded a lot of times for somebody who's a number 1 ace pitcher like he was.
Right.
Usually people get an ace and they keep him, right? But he got traded. He played for 6 teams. So
still, I mean, when you're 16 votes short, it's hard to imagine that you won't get over the hump at some point before your eligibility expires.
They have one more year. Clemens has one more. I want to say this. I hope we don't run out of time. Clemens to me is somebody who ought to get some consideration because, he went testified before Congress, and I was the media person for that committee. I was there at that hearing that day. I actually talked to him that morning. And he goes out there, and it's him on one side, Brian McNicoll, the trainer, on the other, who said that he had given him steroid shots. And if you look at those two guys, tell their stories, Clemens looked like he was telling the truth and was proud of it. McNamee looked like he was lying and he was slithering and hoping not to get caught. Now, that's just the impression it left on me, one observer. But the committee referred him for criminal prosecution, and the Department of Justice tried him for lying about steroid use, and he was acquitted. So to me, the only evidence you have against him is, hearsay on one side and acquittal by 12 of his peers on the other. So, and his accomplishments are, no one, serious baseball fan disagrees.
Unbelievable pitcher.
Yeah, unbelievable that, he would belong, absent this controversy. I think pretty much every baseball fan would say he's a Hall of Famer. To me, it's like, okay, you want to take it out on Barry Bonds, I get it. You want to take it out on Schilling for his politics or his just general abrasiveness. It is a political election. It's by baseball writers, but I think Clemens is being dealt with unfairly here. I don't know what else he could have done. He can do to establish his innocence.
Yeah. I mean, when he goes off the ballot, though, I mean, does he have another chance later on through the Veterans Committee at a later time?
Yeah, he does. They have one more year. All three of them are on one more year of the regular ballot. You had to get 75% of the vote from the baseball writers, which I like because, the Football Hall of Fame is everybody who played 8 years. Pretty much, right? I mean, it's really, there's a lot of mediocre people in there.
Yeah.
But basketball is, that's watered down to some extent too. But baseball, you got to be pretty darn good to get in there. So and politics can't enter into it. Obviously the New York teams have a little bit of an edge, but for the most part, you got to prove it on the field for an enduring amount of time, a lot of time.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. I mean, I agree. I mean, when you look at the major sports Hall of Fame, it's just that sometimes you see it's like that guy got in, that guy got into some of these things. It's like no, they were not really that great. Especially if you're especially looking at baseball as the standard bearer for a Hall of Fame. They set a pretty high bar, and so when you're walking through Cooperstown, I think for me, I get the feeling that these were some of the best of the best.
Right.
You don't really get the mediocre guys in there. They've held them to a very high standard, unlike the other sports, and so I feel much more confident about those players. And I know there's some players that are probably disappointed they didn't make it in to a certain extent, but it is a high honor and it should stay there. I think there's been a lot of calls to lower that bar, but I'm saying never do that.
I think they've got something special because of that bar.
Right. All right. We've gone well over time here, but thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Brian, I always love to talk a little sports at the end. I love to pick his brain. Please remember, always stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again next week.